You're tuned in to Tax Talk DC with the Office of Tax and Revenue. Join us as we offer insights on the city's tax initiatives, share important resources for residents, and get answers to some of your most pressing tax questions. Now, here's your host, Jennifer Valentine.
Hello, and welcome to Tax Talk DC, where we break down the tax topics that matter most to you. I'm your host, Jennifer Valentine, and we've got another great episode lined up for you today. Joining me for this discussion are two dedicated and knowledgeable members of the Office of Tax and Revenue's leadership and management teams. Roddy Skipworth, Director of the Collection and Enforcement Administration, also known as CEA, and Siobhan McKnight, CEA's branch chief over the specialty collection units in OTR. First, Roddy and I will discuss the role of CEA in tax administration for the district and how CEA's programs impact you as a taxpayer. Then I'll talk with Siobhan about the clean hands process. If you require a license or permit in DC, then you don't want to miss this discussion. We'll get answers to your pressing questions as Roddy and Siobhan take us behind the scenes of CEA's operations. We have a lot we want to cover today, so let's get into it, DC. Hi, Roddy. Thanks for joining us and welcome to the show.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Jennifer.
Now, if you don't mind, I'd like to begin by sharing with our listeners a bit about your background and your role as Director of the Collection and Enforcement Administration at OTR. Was tax administration always the career plan? And if you would, please walk us through some of the key responsibilities and challenges of your current role.
Sure, absolutely. So, I'm just so happy to be here and share this information with the citizens of the District of Columbia. Public service has always been my career path. I started my career in the Pennsylvania Department of Revenue in various compliance positions, and then recently transitioned to the District of Columbia about 5 years ago. I consider it an honor to serve the taxpayers of the District of Columbia. And when we talk about the key roles of my position, the vision of the Office of Tax and Revenue is to be a premier customer-centric government agency. And a lot of those tasks that go along with being customer-centric are around notifying taxpayers in a timely manner. So that's one of the major functions of the Collection and Enforcement Administration, whether it's through U.S. mail or electronic notification. We are also responsible for managing the district's accounts receivable, making sure that revenue is coming in when it's supposed to, and that when we have to have a statute of limitation of stopping collection, that we're writing those liabilities off. And then account resolution. Account resolution is not just receiving payments. It's also about making adjustments to accounts as well. Part of our mission is to make sure that taxpayers only pay the amount of tax that they owe. So sometimes there comes to be adjustments when taxpayers file or if a payment is missed or something of that nature. And then ultimately, the piece that we're all responsible for within the Office of Tax and Revenue is to increase voluntary compliance. Mr. Richardson, our tax commissioner, talks about this as being our mantra and making sure that increasing each year that a greater amount of taxpayers have the ability to pay voluntarily as opposed through the enforcement process.
Wow, thanks for that background, Roddy. It's really exciting to hear that you're dedicated to public service, considering the immense responsibility you have. Now, we've delved a little bit into CEA's function, and you talked about OTR's vision. What would you say is the core mission of CEA specifically? And is there any more detail about the central functions that you'd like to share?
Sure. I'll take you into a little deeper about what we do. Our mission within our administration is to properly collect the proper amount of tax from all taxpayers who have not filed or paid, to encourage voluntary compliance and to provide accurate, timely, and courteous customer service. Now, with that being said, some specific programs that we manage. We have a non-filer program that we send out letters and have a phone campaign. We also have a presence in the OTR's walk-in center. So if taxpayers, as opposed to calling or try to navigate through our portal, if they wanted to come to our building, there will be representatives there. We also are responsible for, collecting liabilities, actually collecting revenue. We have an outreach and education function that I'm very proud of. We have revenue officers that will go to committee meetings. They will go to local associations, annual meetings, and provide information at the request of those associations. We manage the bankruptcy process within the District of Columbia. Also, the Clean Hands program. Siobhan will get into that a little bit more later. And then some enforcement functions. If we are not able to resolve liabilities in a voluntary manner, we do have the statutory authority to lien, levy, and garnish. And then we also have a field enforcement program where we will send revenue officers out into the community in both fashions. In a canvassing fashion, when taxpayers do not have liabilities, we will go into businesses, introduce ourselves, work with business owners, just let them know that, hey, we're here to help. My revenue officers will give those business owners their business card. If they have any questions about setting up accounts, managing their online portal, they can always give us a call in advance as opposed to waiting until there's an issue. But if things progress to that manner, we do have the authority to revoke sales tax licenses, revoke liquor licenses, and then also seize property if it progresses to that level.
Understood. Okay, that was really helpful in better understanding CEA's purpose and the functions that you all are responsible for. And building on that, I think we have a really awesome opportunity here to clear up any misconceptions about the tax collecting arm of OTR. Now, as you can imagine, and as I'm sure you've experienced yourself, those who may be behind on a tax bill, for instance, could feel a sense of nervousness when interacting with CEA, right? So what do you want the public to know about collection and enforcement that might help put them at ease?
Absolutely. And we hear this all the time when we talk to taxpayers. I really do. And I really do feel for taxpayers that receive calls or letters from us. And they do have that sense of nervousness. And I think sometimes for taxpayers, the first intention is to ignore it, thinking it may somehow go away. But I truly want them to know that this is not a gotcha campaign. We send these letters. We go through a lot of iterations of trying to make our letters plain and clear so that taxpayers can resolve whatever we're trying to communicate with them about. Our team is customer focused. And if taxpayers do wait or do ignore the communication, there are some real challenges that come along with that, such as increased penalty and interest.
Right.
If taxpayers don't call us in a timely manner, a greater potential for enforcement action, where if we don't hear from taxpayers after so many letters or calls, we will move to a stronger enforcement action, i.e., whether a lien or a levy or a garnishment. We want taxpayers to know just because we send them a liability and they know that they owe it, that doesn't mean they have to pay it all at once, right? We have various installment agreement options for taxpayers that make sense for their financial situation.
Roddy, thank you for that information and clarification. I do think it's really important that we educate taxpayers not only about what you all are responsible for and your goals, but how you actually go about achieving them, and that ultimately CEA is here to help them meet their tax obligations in a fair and equitable manner. I think you made that very clear.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, sure. Now, thinking about all the information you've shared so far, it seems that CEA is responsible for quite a few programs. Now, with that, how large is your staff? And do you have any external help, like outside collection agencies, for example?
Yes, great question. Now, I do know that there are some communication that goes out from the Internal Revenue Service, from the IRS, that has said in the past that the IRS does not use collection agencies. Mm-hmm. But I will say that the District of Columbia does use external collection agencies. So we will get taxpayers that call us that wonder, is this real? Is this a scam? Do I have to respond to this? And so today, I just want to let taxpayers know that the District of Columbia, Office of Tax and Revenue, does use external collection agencies to help us with the collection process and communicating with taxpayers. They are under our policies and procedures. That means the same way that we treat taxpayers, our collection agencies have to treat taxpayers in the same way, that same fair and equitable manner. We have the highest standards of security and data confidentiality when communicating with them, but we do have limited resources within OTR, and so we do outsource some of our collections in order to expand our capability of communicating with taxpayers.
That makes perfect sense. And I'm sure the public is happy to know that their information is secure, whether it's through OTR or your partners. Now, I did ask you earlier about CEA's mission, and you shared that one of your goals is to encourage voluntary taxpayer compliance. What does an efficient CEA operation produce to lend to that effort? And generally speaking, what does overall success look like to you?
I so appreciate you asking me that question. Within the Office of Tax and Revenue, we talk about this dynamic between us as the tax administration and taxpayers all the time. What does success really look like? And us communicating with our elected officials is a big piece of that as well. We are working with taxpayers on a day-to-day basis, so we may see some inefficiencies in laws, or we may work with other states that have laws that help increase voluntary compliance. So we do work with our elected officials to make changes to statutes or to propose statutes that they could consider. In addition, making sure that our forms and instructions and guidance are clear and understandable. And so we go through this on an annual basis. And Siobhan will talk a little bit more about this later about the Clean Hands program. But it takes us a good amount of time. Each year we are going over these forms. We're going over these manuals to make sure that they're updated. And then a little bit before I talked about the outreach and education process. That's a big arm for OTR, making sure that we can share relevant tax information with taxpayers in their community, in their locations. And so that's something that we spend a lot of resources and a lot of time and effort on, trying to increase electronic filing. Electronic filing is the wave of today and the future. I think taxpayers, as you see this trend, have appreciated that more. It helps us with correcting errors. It also helps with processing returns and processing refunds in a timely manner. So that increase in electronic filing is really important to us. And then having a proper protest or appeal process. We're sharing that information in our assessments so that taxpayers know what the rules and responsibilities are with respect to protests. In addition, taxpayers and tax practitioners have a responsibility in this partnership as well. And so when we're doing outreach and education, we share that with the community that, hey, we want you to learn about your tax obligations. So come and meet with us, come and learn. We have an annual practitioners meeting each year where we share new laws and new regulations. We want taxpayers and tax practitioners to review their demographic information each year to make sure, hey, if anything changed, please update your contact information, update your address so that we're not sending notifications to the wrong area.
Right.
And then what we talked about earlier, just responding to our notices in a timely manner. It is a partnership with respect to voluntary compliance. And so we want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to reduce that burden on taxpayers and tax practitioners.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for that very in-depth explanation there. And to follow up, if our listeners have received a notice, a bill, or if they just have general collection-related questions, who should they contact and how?
So the primary way I would love taxpayers to contact us is on our taxpayer portal, mytax.dc.gov. I think that if taxpayers explored that, they'd find out that there are a lot of self-service ways that they can manage their tax obligations. You can file returns, You can make payments. You can set up installment agreements. You can update your demographic information. But if those don't work for you, there are other options. They can call our collections call center at 202-724-5045. And our hours of operation for the call center are 8:15 to 5:30 p.m.
Perfect. Thank you. And you mentioned earlier that you have representation in the walk-in center. So what's the address for the walk-in center?
Yes, that address is 1101 4th Street Southwest, second floor.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for that, Siobhan. And thank you, Roddy, for that in-depth look at CEA's operation. You've put us in a great position to talk about one of the programs you mentioned a couple of times during our conversation, and that is the Clean Hands program. And for that, we are talking tax with Miss Siobhan McKnight. Hi, Siobhan. Thanks so much for joining us today, and welcome to Tax Talk DC.
Thank you.
Siobhan, I'd like to start by briefly discussing your role at OTR. As I mentioned earlier, you're the branch chief over CEA's specialty collection units. Can you tell us a bit about your branch, the work you do, and maybe walk us through what a typical day looks like for you?
Yes, of course. Specialty Division is the more public-facing branch of the Collection and Enforcement Administration. When taxpayers reach out to OTR, they are more than likely to interact with one of my programs, which are the Walk-In Center, Call Center, TDI program, non-filer program, outsource, and of course, Clean Hands. As far as a typical day for me, I don't know that there is one, but mostly that would consist of checking in with my direct reports, reviewing and approving work, meetings, handling high-priority taxpayer inquiries, ensuring adequate staffing in both the walk-in center and the call center. So really, in a nutshell, I'm overseeing and directing all operations of the specialty division.
Okay, thanks for that background, Siobhan. What a dynamic role you're in. Now, I'm certain that we're properly prepared to dig into our burning topic today. So can you explain to our listeners what a certificate of clean hands is and what the purpose is?
A certificate of clean hands is an official document that's issued by the DC Office of Tax and Revenue. It demonstrates that you do not owe more than $1,000 to the district and that you have filed all required tax returns for the past 5 years. Some of the reasons that you would need a certificate of clean hands include obtaining or renewing a business license, applying for a grant, securing a government contract, or receiving certain goods and services from the district.
Okay, and how would I go about requesting a certificate?
As Mr. Skipworth mentioned earlier, you would do that via our self-service portal online at mytax.dc.gov. And here's how that works.
Okay.
If you already have a MyTax account, you would simply log in and use the self-service feature to request your certificate. If you don't have a MyTax account and you do pay DC taxes, you would need to create an account first, then use the self-service feature to make your request. In the event you don't pay DC taxes or you're new to the district as of January 1st, 2024, you will have to submit a manual request. For that, you will be uploading a current government-issued photo ID, such as a driver's license. Important to note here, Jennifer, when we say current, we mean not expired.
Understood.
Please make sure if you're uploading your ID that it is valid.
Okay. Now, once I've requested my certificate, what happens next? What does the review process look like? How long can I expect to wait? And what are some of the reasons I might be denied a certificate of clean hands?
Great question. So our review process, we're going to be looking at your tax account as well as your records with the Department of Employment Services, DOES, if that's applicable to you. And we're looking for any outstanding debts over $1,000, as well as any missing or unfiled tax returns from the past 5 years.
Okay.
This process is based on the Clean Hands Law, which is found in DC Code, Paren 47, Section 2862.
All right, let's give everyone a minute to write that down if they want to look it up.
Yes.
Okay. Now, let's say, for example, I currently owe taxes in the district and I'm on an active payment plan. Will I be able to obtain a clean hand certificate in that circumstance?
Yes, that's a great question. One of the misconceptions around the program is that if you do owe you're not able to obtain a certificate of clean hands, and that's not correct.
Right.
If you are on a payment plan, yes, you can receive clean hands, but your payment plan must be current. Something else important to note here is that if you're establishing a payment plan for the purposes of obtaining your clean hands, you will have to make your first payment, and your first payment does have to post before we will issue the clean hands. Please allow extra time when making a payment. It does take 2 or more business days for those payments to post.
Okay, understood. I think I mentioned earlier when we were talking about obtaining the certificate, the wait time. Do you have a general time frame where you want to have these completed?
Yes, and thank you for reminding me about that because you did mention it. So in general, we are processing these requests in approximately 3 business days. Sometimes it's faster, sometimes the wait time is longer depending upon the individual issues on the particular account, but we are working them expeditiously.
Okay, sounds good. Now, everything sounds pretty straightforward. And before we wrap up this part of the discussion, is there anything else you'd like our listeners to know about this process?
Yes, the only thing I would like the listeners to know is that we are here to help you. We're here to support you with your goals and things that you're trying to achieve here in the district. I do encourage our listeners, if you do need clean hands, be proactive. Take advantage of the self-service features on My Tax and know whether you're eligible or not. Nothing worse than having an opportunity to secure funding or have an imminent deadline and finding out that you have multiple issues that are going to take time to resolve.
Right.
But we're absolutely here to help you. Something else that we did with the program, we did an enhancement where when you're online, if you're deemed to be not eligible for clean hands, the system will display a denial reason code. That provides insight as to what the issue is. If you're not able to resolve that online via the portal, you can reach out to us and we'll further assist you from there.
Okay. Did we talk about some of the reasons that you might be denied?
We did not. So those would include, obviously, if you're on a payment plan, that's going to require manual intervention where we'll have to review your account, make sure that you're complying with the terms of your payment plan. Mm-hmm. You could be denied for an issue with DOES. Thank you for reminding me of that as well. With DOES, Department of Employment Services, if you do have an issue, listeners, you'll have to contact that agency directly as we are not privy to what that entails.
Understood.
You could have a missing tax return. There could be a missing registration. And these are the things, again, we want you to be proactive as your business is changing. You may now be liable for a different tax type.
Right.
That's where you'd have to also update your registration as well.
Okay. And one more time, if I have questions about the process or my clean hands request, who should I contact and how?
Yes, of course. You can contact us at area code 202-724-5045. You can also submit a web message through the mytaxdc.gov online portal. If you do have a clean hands inquiry, very important to make sure you select clean hands question from the drop-down menu so that it's routed properly.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you for that bit of detail. And thank you so much for sharing that key information with our listeners. And with that, we'll wrap up today's episode. I want to thank our amazing guests, Roddy Skipworth and Siobhan McKnight, for joining us to share their expertise and to discuss the Collection and Enforcement Administration and the Clean Hands certification process. I think we all have a better understanding of both after these discussions. It has been an absolute pleasure talking tax with you both, and we truly appreciate your time. To our listeners, we hope you enjoyed the conversations as much as we did, and that these tax tips will be of value to you. We're looking forward to bringing you another great episode, and we hope you'll join us next time. Until then, I'm Jennifer Valentine, and thanks for listening to Tax Talk DC.
Thanks for tuning in to Tax Talk DC with your host, Jennifer Valentine. For more information and resources, visit mytax.dc.gov.